Well, Matt, welcome to the program and thank you so much for your time. So, what is the state of the market around the countryside at the moment?
Well, it's pretty good, to be honest. Everyone's coming out of a winter that in some areas didn't really hurt too bad, which there was some concerns during the year after the dry summer that there wasn't going to be enough moisture in the ground, but there is, as usual, in some areas it's a little bit more, in some areas a little bit less, but overall it's okay and everyone seems to have got through pretty well. We had some very good numbers at the Temuka cattle sale a week or so ago now, with nearly 900 cattle there and some fantastic prices coming in, anywhere between $1,200 and $1,600 a head for some of those cattle down there, which was great. And that was sort of the South on a cattle-only event out of Temuka, which is an annual thing. So again, good numbers, high demand. And then if we move over to Stortford Lodge over in Hawke's Bay, looking at the sheep, again, some very, very good numbers there. Surprisingly, some of the blackface are getting some really, really high numbers. But right through, all of the hogget market was, again, very, very strong. So a lot of stock went into Hawke's Bay out of King Country last year, when King Country were experiencing their very dry moment. So now some of those animals have really put on some fantastic condition and have been presented in a really good way. So top demand, top prices getting made for top animals.
So I guess with the price of particularly lambs at the moment, you'd be wanting to eat as many as you can. Is the lambing season, it seems to have gone pretty well this year?
Yeah, it has. Well, I haven't heard any stories or any bad stories, if you like, of any situations around the country due to climate or what it might be. So I think that hopefully it's nice to be in these years when the planets line up, when the weather's nice and the weather has been good for us. Winter's been gentle. Let's hope that spring and summer is okay for us as well. And if the planets continue to be lined up, then the market will remain strong, I can see, for the foreseeable future, which is a fantastic result.
Well, Matt, speaking of weather conditions, you've just been in Australia at a red meat industry, a training event, I think you mentioned, where the weather, of course, the drought, the never-ending drought. I imagine you must have some great comparisons between Australia and New Zealand.
Yeah, it's really funny. Well, it's not funny, I suppose, for the people up there. We were in Geelong, so it's nice and green around there, but up in the north, yeah, they've had years without rain, and it's pretty serious. And they were talking to our Australian colleagues and industry colleagues over there. They really sort of can't understand how we can say we can have a drought here when it doesn't rain for 6 weeks, and suddenly we're in real trouble. And some of those people they've had 6 mils of rain in about 3 years, and it's just it's next level when it comes to how they are dealing with it and how they are coping. So some really tough times for people in that country. But
what else did you sort of learn? Just chewing the fat with the Australians and of course your local industry leading lights as well.
Yeah, well there was a lot of people. It was called the Red Meat program, and there's a lot of people from the red meat industry in Australia, and we heard from the leading buyers and sellers for Coles and Woolworths and the big supermarket chains over there and the big meat processing companies, but some really fascinating insights into what's happening and where all this demand is coming into New Zealand and Australia for red meat protein out of China. With China is dealing with, of course, the African swine flu in their pork population. And one of the presentations we had was someone who had done some insight work, and when people in China are asked about pork, they say pork is like rice. It's just what we eat. So it's an everyday, it's like bread and water and milk. Pork is in everything. Now they've got, on the last count from Rabobank, about 360 million animals in China. And the reality is Rabobank had said back in April that they thought about 200 million of those animals would be culled. Now there's all kinds of different reports coming out from people who have been there, and they're saying that maybe up to 90% of that pork population is going to be culled or has been culled. The shortfall that means there's 10, and this is just for this year, this calendar year, there's a protein or pork shortage of 10 million tonnes of finished product. So, I mean, that's an outrageous quantity, and there is nowhere in the world who can fill that.
Yeah.
10 million tonnes is about what Canada produce every year. So you can't just make 10 million tonnes appear from somewhere to fill that space. So while that might be an unfortunate situation for a lot of people, it means great things for the red meat producers around the world, in particular in New Zealand and Australia, where the demand for alternative meat options is skyrocketing and going through the roof. There is a real danger there because you have to make a real balance. We can't just turn off our long-term clients and suddenly look at perhaps what some people may say is the golden goose, which is this big opportunity in China. So you need to measure it and look after it and make sure that we both look after our current clients who have been with us for a long term, and then see how we can generate this opportunity for us out of both for us being Australia and New Zealand into that market. But the opportunity it's eye-wateringly big when it comes to the part of protein that the Chinese diet is missing.
But intriguingly as well, of course, they might get a taste for it, and in the future, they might not go back to pork once pork recovers.
That's it, and I can see it. I mean, and one of the people who spoke to us, and they run a majority of the free-range pork farms in Australia, and they were saying that they can't see this issue being fixed for the next 10 years.
Wow.
And they talked about, that's just to fill that shortfall. And amongst that, like you said, once they've experienced other red meat options, they will stay with them. And so that market, while we might experience a big growth, the growth is long term. It's not going to go away, and the opportunity there, as long as it's managed right by ourselves here in New Zealand and our colleagues in Australia, it's a long term gain for everybody. And of course, amongst all that, you've got all the billion or so ducks that they kill every year, and the multi-billion numbers of chickens that are slaughtered in China. It's the size just in that country alone is absolutely amazing. And all my years in the primary industry, I've always heard about this big opportunity, or how we're going to manage this Chinese opportunity, and when the bubble may burst. I can't see it bursting. It may change and flex a little bit, but it's going to be there for a long time. So we need to manage that alongside our other value-added clients around the world. So
Fantastic.